Welcome to B1ack Summ0n3r. Join Kelvin, who sacrifices memories for incredible powers and an S-class summoner title. Guided by the goddess Melfina, Kelvin's new life is filled with thrilling battles and powerful companion. Watch as he strives to summon Melfina's physical form by leveling up and defeating mighty foes. The god from Kelvin's world accidentally caused his Celsius's death, leading to him being reincarnated by the goddess of reincarnation. Despite his affection for her, she says he won't remember her or his previous life due to reincarnation. However, he receives new skills as compensation for his reincarnation. Upon waking in a forest, a menu appears in front of Kelvin, displaying a message from the goddess of reincarnation about his reincarnation, the new world, and his stats. Seeing he's a summoner, the menu advises him to head to a nearby town where he can register at the Adventurers Guild. Without wasting any time, Kelvin heads to the town, discovering that his pre-reincarnation self added the goddess of reincarnation as a tame being. In the town of Parth, Kelvin explains how Melfina became the goddess of reincarnation and how he convinced her to become his tame companion. It's revealed that he sacrificed his previous life memories for more skill points and asked if he can summon her, but Melfina reveals his MP level isn't high enough yet. At the bustling Adventurers Guild, Kelvin registers after speaking with the guild receptionist. Thanks to his understand language and literacy skills, he can read and write in the new world. To avoid attracting attention due to his summoner title, he registers as a green mage, so the receptionist says he's now an F-ranked adventurer and explains the guild's ranking system and other important details. For his first quest, he chooses to hunt blue slimes. He buys a wooden rod from the weapon store and heads to the grassy plains outside Parth to find blue slimes. Using his S-rank appraisal eye, he learns their stats, and Melfina informs him that to gain a monster's consent for taming, it must be weakened first. H decides to use his wooden rod instead of magic, but this fails, and a slime hits him in the stomach. Undeterred, he manages to successfully form a contract with the slime and names it Clotho. He learns he can communicate with his companions telepathically, referring to this ability as his servant network, and defeats the other slimes in the area with Clotho's help. Returning to town with enough gold for room and board, Kelvin takes a detour down an alley and finds a slave trader displaying his slaves. A half-blood elf catches his eye, but he doesn't pursue it further, and later gets a room at the Spirit Song Inn and enjoys a meal. The next day, he goes on a monster hunting spree with Clotho. At the Adventurers Guild, Kelvin learns from Ange that he has been promoted to E rank. However, Ange says she's worried about Kelvin taking on higher rank missions without forming a party. Kelvin inwardly admits he's been hiding his status as a summoner to avoid unnecessary attention before Ange advises him to upgrade his equipment. Acknowledging this, Kelvin asks to take on a D rank quest, so an adventurer named Cashel suggests the Black Ghost Knight quest to him. After discussing a recent successful mission with Ange, Cashel introduces himself as a D rank adventurer, and some conversations among other adventurers reveal that he has the strength of a B rank and is known as a rookie crusher. Cashel offers Kelvin a spot in his party, but Ange warns against it as the Black Ghost Knight is reportedly very strong. Kelvin declines the offer and uses his appraisal eye to check Cashel's stats, an ominous title when he insists. Kelvin then proposes a competition to see who can defeat the Black Ghost Knight first, so Cashel reluctantly accepts, and Kelvin begins to formulate his plan. Cashel regroups outside the guild with his shady party members, Gimel and Raj. Gimel tells him about Kelvin's stats and skills. Around dusk, inside the Wicked Spirit's castle, Cashel's group reaches the hallway before the throne room, finding undead skeletons scattered on the floor. Kelvin, holding his verdant staff, steps out of hiding to reveal himself, and Cashel's group notes he's a wind mage. Kelvin intestinally taunts them, hearing which Raj angrily attacks, but he falls into his mudvine trap. Cashel deduces Kelvin cast the spell using his concealment skill so Gimel, alarmingly, tries to flee but is stopped by the evolved Clotho. In a flashback, Clotho evolves from a blue slime to a slime Glutonia after Kelvin killed enough monsters, and in the present, he easily defeats Gimel. Raj escapes the swampy trap but gets instantly caught by Clotho before Kelvin swiftly defeats Cashel. Once he's done with them, he moves forward to the room where the Black Ghost Knight stands. Using his appraisal eye, he learns the knight's name, Gerard, along with his stats and skills, and admits he's interested in recruiting Gerard. Kelvin has a normal conversation with him and learns about Gerard's past as he recalls the fall of the kingdom of Ulkarl when an elven representative named Gildura demanded they join the Lysaea Empire to destroy the empire of Deramus, but the king refusing led to the kingdom's ruin and the deaths of Gerard's wife, Betty, and daughter, Connie. Determined to avenge Ulkarl, Gerard says he is still duty-bound to the living realm. Kelvin duels Gerard with Melfina's advice and Clotho's help, as Gerard remembers his painful past and is eventually defeated. The next day, Kelvin turns in the quest for the Black Ghost Knight and learns Cashel's group was in prison and is likely going to get executed for their crimes. Celebrating his successful quest, Kelvin is informed by Ange of another promotion by the guild master. As Kelvin walks up the stairway, he meets a finely dressed older man. Kelvin meets with Leo, the guild master of Parth's Adventurers Guild, and in the guild master's room, Leo serves him tea while they discuss Kelvin's recent success in defeating the Black Ghost Knight and exposing what Cashel and his party have been doing. He questions Kelvin about being a summoner and asks if he follows advice from his tame beasts, which Kelvin affirms. He then asks Leo why he did nothing about Cashel despite knowing about his shady dealings. So Leo explains that Cashel is a noble from the militant nation of Tricen, and he needed solid proof before taking action against him. Leo reveals that he wants them to be friends, mentioning his past encounters with other worlders, specifically the heroes of the Holy Empire Deramus. Melfina, who reincarnated these heroes, promises Kelvin that she'll explain everything later, and Leo explains that the priestess of Deramus foretold the revival of the demon lord, so Kelvin guesses that Leo wants him to protect the town in the hero's absence. Leo confirms this and offers incentives for him to agree, so Kelvin accepts. Later, the innkeeper Claire congratulates Kelvin on reaching B rank in the guild, and he asks Melfina for more information about the heroes of Deramus while having his lunch in his room. She reveals that the heroes were chosen for their good looks and knowledge before he decides to retrieve his reward money from Clotho and heads to the alleyway where slaves are sold, wanting to strengthen his party with a new rear guard who hasn't been previously owned, as the slave's master controls how their skill points are allocated. In the alleyway, Kelvin notices the half-elf he saw the other day, so the slave trader explains that no one wants to buy her due to a curse that burns anyone who touches her. Melfina identifies it as the Fire Dragon King's curse, which can only be broken by an A-rank white magic spell called Sacred Bless. Kelvin leaves but later returns to purchase the half-elf named Ifil, and they introduce themselves to each other on their way back to the inn before Kelvin casts Sacred Bless to break her curse. Later, Claire dresses Ifil in a maid's outfit and they enjoy dinner together. In Kelvin's room, he reveals all his secrets to Ifil and allows her to allocate her skill points as she wishes. However, they're forced to share a bed, because of which Kelvin doesn't get any sleep the whole night. A month after purchasing Ifil, she and Kelvin explore the dark purple forest, defeating numerous monsters to help her level up and acquire new skills and abilities. Later, they report their success in killing a wicked Saj tree to Ange at the Adventurers Guild, who congratulates them and informs them that completing one more quest will allow them to take the rank up exam, which will allow him to reach rank A and Ifil rank B. After discussing Ifil's last exam, Ange invites her to try a new sweet store and includes Kelvin in the invitation, which he reluctantly accepts. Kelvin meets Ange by a fountain, and they are joined by Ifil, dressed beautifully, seeing which Kelvin compliments her. They sit at a table after buying sweets, and Uffel tries to feed Kelvin some cake, which attracts a crowd. Seeing which Anj does the same with a sweet roll, Tabra, the third prince of Trycen, and his guards notice them as well, so one guard suggests Tabra discipline Kelvin due to his commoner status, but Tabra shows interest in Uffel and offers to forgive them if Kelvin hands over one of his ladies. Kelvin swiftly deals with the guards and uses a gravity spell on Tabra, asking his reason for being in Parth. Overwhelmed, Tabra reveals he is there to meet a strong adventurer to serve him, so Kelvin reveals that he's the adventurer and refuses to work for Tabra. They then continue their day shopping for more sweet, while at the Holy Empire of Deramis' great cathedral, Priestess Colette prays to Melfina, asking for a meeting. Melfina answers, and Colette updates her on the heroes of Deramis. Please, Melfina gives Colette an oracle instructing the heroes to exterminate an evil on the western continent and avoid Parth, so Colette transfers this oracle to the arriving heroes. That night, Uffel thanks Kelvin for his help, and they have a touching conversation. The next day, Kelvin reviews the hero party stats with Gerard, Clotho, and Uffel, remarking that the heroes' levels are lower than expected. He says he's happy with successfully creating a staff from a monster material drop, despite failing so many times, and Gerard notes that he also made a dreadnought shield and crimson cape for him, while Uffel mentions creating a sage's black robe for Kelvin with her sewing skills. Claire then informs them that the guild wants to speak with Kelvin. In the guildmaster's room, Leo tells Kelvin about a rank D dungeon called the Hermit's Cave, where a secret room containing a powerful demon was discovered. He also mentions an incident with the third prince of Trycen earlier that day and the trouble it caused, after which Kelvin accepts the quest. He heads to the Hermit's Cave dungeon along with Ifil and Gerald and learns from Erd about the situation. They enter the dungeon and find a demon woman chained to a monolith in a secret room. Another demon, Archdemon Victor, introduces himself and seals the room, revealing the woman as the Demon Lord's daughter. Melfina informs Kelvin about 3 past Demon Lords, and Victor explains that Gustav, the current one, didn't officially have children. He reveals that he plans to absorb their power and become the next Demon Lord, as Melfina and Gerard notice Kelvin's habit of smiling before facing a strong opponent and call him a battle junkie. Kelvin excitedly tells Victor that he looks forward to fight him, so Victor casts the black magic spell Hades' Army, which resurrects a group of demons from nearby skeleton piles. Victor orders to attack with a snap of his finger, as Kelvin notes the demons are B rank and uses his wand to cast Wind Shot, destroying a small group, while Gerard helps take out the rest. Victor acknowledges their skills and uses a smoke bomb to conceal his presence for a sneak attack. However, Kelvin senses him and alerts Gerard, who counterattacks. Despite this, Victor overwhelms Gerard and focuses on Kelvin next, so Clotho uses magic absorption on Victor, and Kelvin casts Glory Sanction, binding Victor's left arm but failing to hold him completely. He then enchants Gerard's sword with Vortex Edge, and as Gerard attacks, Victor tries a sneak attack on Kelvin, but Uffel intervenes with her Blaze Arrow, incinerating Victor's right arm before Gerard slices off his left arm. Kelvin cautiously has the group fall back as Glory Sanction expires. Victor praises his party's performance, claiming they did the second largest amount of damage ever done to him. He remarks that he's lost his edge due to the Era's peace, but doesn't give up, casting Jin Scrimmage to cover himself in a dark force. Kelvin, Ifil, and Gerard try to interrupt the spell, but don't make it in time, so Kelvin instructs Gerard use his loyalty skill to maximum power. When Victor lunges, Kelvin casts Earthen Rampart, which Victor breaks through, forcing Gerard to use his shield defensively. Victor slowly overwhelms Gerard until Effo distracts him with arrows, allowing him to counterattack. Clotho overwhelms Victor with fell weapons Kelvin created before a triple attack from him. Ifil and Clotho slams Victor against the wall, causing rubble to topple towards Sarah Baal. Victor catches and moves the rubble, saving Sarah, and then collapses, surrendering. Kelvin calls out Victor's lie about eating Sarah, and Victor admits he lied to motivate Kelvin's party to fight harder because Gustav entrusted Victor with protecting Sarah as her caretaker. In a flashback, Victor trains Sarah in magical boxing. During an attack on the Demon King's castle, King Gustav seals Sarah, sending her away to safety, intending for her to become the next Demon King in an era of peace. Before dying, Victor asks Sarah to join Kelvin's party, refusing to join himself, as his loyalty lies with Gustav. Kelvin breaks Sarah's seal, and she awakens, cursing Victor and her father for their selfishness. Outside, Erd meets the party and confirms that the Demon King has been defeated. Kelvin introduces Sarah, disguised with a camouflage hairpin, as someone possessed by the demon, and evolves Gerard into an Abyssal Knight commander. After a brief conversation with Sarah, Kelvin and his party show her around Parth, and he reports the successful quest to the Adventurers Guild, raising him to rank A, which the receptionists and guild members celebrate back at the inn. Sometime later, Sarah reflects on the excitement of the outside world and remembers a memory with Victor. Kelvin tames Sarah as one of his monsters and later reveals his S-rank blacksmithing and Ethel's S-rank sewing skills in his room. Sarah shows him the weapon Arondite, made from Victor's armor, and the armor Queen's Terror. Gerard receives a new magical sword called Dying's Leaf, and Kelvin and Sarah's weapons are reserved for battle. Hungry, Ethel asks him what he wants, so he requests rice, but Ethel and the others, unfamiliar with rice, are curious. Traveling by wagon to Toraj, Sarah spots a river, so he says they should go fishing and promises to show her what it is when they reach Toraj, where rice grows. Gerard reports that Melfina has disappeared, but Kelvin recalls she went on vacation, allowing him to summon one of her avatars. Sarah senses there are some people observing them, and they turn out to be bandits led by the Black Wind gang. The wagon driver recognizes them as a notorious group supposedly defeated by an A-rank adventurer from Trison, so Kelvin lets Sarah handle them, asking her to not use Arondite. Sarah easily defeats bandit Ensu, and despite their strength, she overwhelms the others, including a strong bandit named Gilda. He observes that Sarah's level of 75 far surpasses the bandits' levels of 25. 30, but the bandit leader declares that their boss is level 70, intriguing him. In Toraj, Kelvin admires how similar it looks to old Japan. Sarah, remembering Victor's promise to teach her to swim, asks Kelvin to teach her, so he blushingly agrees. They turn in the captured bandits at Toraj's Adventurers Guild, where Guildmaster Mist, a former party member of Leo, thanks them and reveals that Trison's adventurer Kristoff supposedly destroyed the Black Wind, but they're back and capturing people for slavery. Kelvin has Sarah locate a bandit, finding a level 50 person at the town entrance before the heroes of Deramus arrive. Exciting Kelvin, the heroes of Deramus learn of the bandit situation and Toya wants to intervene, but Setsuna insists they follow Melfina's guiding them to the west. Mist notes Kelvin's request to inform the heroes and recalls Kelvin's plan. At the bandit's base, a bandit named Hope tries to assault a slave girl named Ruka, but Kelvin's party intervenes and Gerard defeats Hope with one punch. Kristoff, revealed as the bandit leader, discusses their operations with Prisra before Hope faints at their door. Kelvin confronts Kristoff, Sarah targets Prisra, and Gerard faces Ado. Kristoff remarks that he's eager to fight Kelvin, but Kelvin remarks that they're preparing for the main course. The heroes of Deramus reach the hideout, finding Clotho protecting the slaves before Toya introduces himself, and Nana communicates with Clotho, learning it is there to protect the slaves. Luca's mom asks the heroes to save the rank, all heroes in trouble, before the heroes find Kristoff and his companions knocked out and face Kelvin's group, who are waiting for them. The heroes of Deramus accusing Kelvin's group of being the Black Wind. Kelvin goes along with it, mocking how weak Gilda's group is before the heroes of Deramus introduce themselves, with Toya declaring that justice will be served. Kelvin laughs, saying they're weak, and proposes a game. If he wins, the heroes must testify against Kristoff and his gang. Toya wants to fight alone, but Setsuna warns him that Kelvin is hiding something, so he agrees to fight with his team. They move to an open area where Ifo reveals Kelvin's plan if he wins. Sarah wants to fight, but Kelvin asks Ifo to serve sandwiches while they watch. Ifo worries about the risk, but he sees it as improving his group fighting skills and testing his new skill eater. Toya believes Kelvin is a notorious Black Wind bandit, and the heroes call upon their fairy's blessings as Toya starts the attack. Kelvin casts Radiant Lances, forcing Toya and Setsuna to block. Nana's monster Mooney uses Fire Breath, but he dodges with an agility buff, and he uses Skill Eater on Miyabi to steal her parallel thinking. Toya attacks to prevent spellcasting, but Kelvin holds him off using Sierra's S-rank martial arts skill. Setsuna intervenes, and Kelvin creates a stone blockade, but she slices through it. Kelvin casts a fireball at Setsuna, but Toya blocks it, determined to defeat the Demon King. Setsuna tearfully urges Toya to rely on them as a team, so he apologizes to the group. They continue battling when a light fairy blinds Kelvin. Nana and Miyabi use ice and dark magic to immobilize him, but he counterattacks with Clef Detonation and advises the heroes on their poor combat techniques after curing his blindness. The heroes trap Kelvin, seemingly at a disadvantage. However, he summons adamantine guardians and uses parallel thinking, casting Radiant Crossfire, which frees him, allowing him to take out the hero party one by one. A while later, Toya wakes up and learns the truth about Kelvin's group. He formally apologizes, and Kelvin promises not to hold anything against him if he follows through with their deal, so he agrees, and asks Kelvin's team to strip, shocking them. Kelvin, Miss, and a guild receptionist watch as Luca, her mother, and the other freed slaves leave on a wagon. After this, Miss asks Kelvin about his next destination, and he replies that he's off to perform a fun punishment game. In a cave, the heroes of Daramis struggle against a giant octopus, and Kelvin watches as Sarah fishes nearby, and Ethel and Clotho prepare a picnic. Despite Kelvin's advice, the heroes have difficulty fighting the octopus, and once they finally defeat it, Kelvin allows the picnic to start. During the picnic, Doramis's priestess, Colette, is mentioned, so Toya explains how Colette summoned them to the alternate world and describes their meeting with Melfina. Kelvin asks the group how they would handle an S-class dungeon with their current strength, so he admits they would have to run due to not being strong enough. Suddenly, Sarah catches a sinister dragon, the cave's boss monster. As she fights the dragon, Kelvin states his actions would make those he protects suffer, but Toya insists his group will train to get strong enough. Impressed, Kelvin tells Toya he passes and joins Sarah in the fight. Later, he and his group see Toya's group off as they take a boat to their next destination. He gives each of them a pendant as a farewell gift. Watching Toya's ship sail off, Gerard approaches Kelvin, who inquires about Liza, the country that destroyed Gerard's home, Alcarl. Gerard confirms it is across the sea, so Kelvin asks if they could win a fight against Liza, and he believes they could, but Kelvin wants to defeat the other S-class monsters on their current continent first. He reveals that the pendants have a minor stats boost enchantment, and a secret function he hopes will never be used. Sarah informs them that a messenger from Guild Master Miss said an important person wants to meet them, so Kelvin and his group meet with the king of Toraj, Tsubaki Fujiwara, who thanks them for dealing with the Black Wind bandits and the S-ranked dragon. Despite wanting to hold a feast, Tsubaki can't due to the conflict with Trisen, but still hopes to reward them. When Tsubaki asks Kelvin what he'd like, he requests the right to purchase rice, and she cheerily agrees, giving them unlimited rice and promising to send more if needed. She then holds a small banquet for the group, and they all enjoy themselves. Several days later, Evo serves Kelvin a traditional Japanese meal, and he compliments her. Tsubaki joins them, praising Effil's cooking and tries to convince Kelvin to stay in Toraj, but he declines. wanting to return to Parth, so she allows his group to use Toraj's teleportation gate. News of Kelvin meeting Toraj's king spreads, thanks to Ange, but Kelvin says he has no plans to settle there. He and his friends purchase a house, and Luca and her mother arrive to work as house servants. That night, Melfina returns to Kelvin in the avatar body she mentioned before. Melfina enjoys food prepared by Ifo, and then complains about how hard it was to find Kelvin. Gerard asks who Melfina is, so she formally introduces herself. In the living room, Melfina requests to be called Mel to avoid conflicts with Deramus, and grants Kelvin a blessing. This blessing has two effects. It prevents him from receiving a fatal wound once a month, and gives him the ability to summon heroes. Later, Sarah and Mel spar, while Luca and Gerard observe and outside the mansion. Kelvin wonders whether the heroes of Deramus reach the western continent, and thinks about his new hero summoning ability. After the sparring, Sierra and Mel head to the bath area, where Ethel offers her services. Later, Mel meets Kelvin in the backyard, and he asks about the importance of heroes. Mel explains the Demon King possesses a unique skill called Papia, which multiplies the user's evil and nullifies all damage. Heroes are essential because their nature differs fundamentally from those in that world. Although Kelvin got used to this world quickly due to his amnesia, he worries for the heroes of Deramus, and Mel suggests that if he's anxious about summoning heroes, he should perform a reincarnation summon, and explains the two summoning techniques. That night, Kelvin decides to summon a hero through the reincarnation process. He recalls his tamed creatures, drinks a recovery potion given by Ifo, and is guided through the process by Mel. As he begins the summoning, the summoned person selects their skills, abilities, age, and appearance. The hero, named Rio, appears in the summoning circle and tearfully thanks Kelvin before collapsing from exhaustion, before Kelvin also falls unconscious from using up all his magic. Rio later wakes up in her room and heads outside to explore, so Kelvin joins her and explains that he was also reincarnated into that world. He shares his experiences, and Rio recounts her backstory as a sickly person who found escape through books, and expresses her gratitude for the new world. She asks to join Kelvin's adventurer party, and he agrees, asking her to consider him a step sibling from a different land, which she happily agrees to, and addresses him as Brother Kel, while he calls her Ryan. During the night, Kelvin wakes up in his room to find Sarah, Mel, and Ryan sleeping with him. Although surprised, he's glad they are sleeping soundly, and later lets Rian wander around in the dark purple forest with a Clotho clone on her shoulder. He informs Ruka and Ellie, who also have Clotho clones, that they will level up using his experience share technique by standing outside a dungeon while he fights inside. Sarah, Clotho, and Gerard slay nearby monsters, allowing Rian, Luca, and Ellie to level up. And Ifo reports a shadow wolf approaching, so Kelvin tames it after having its HP. The newly tamed shadow wolf is hugged by Luca, and Rian and Ethel informs Kelvin that Erd's party is approaching. When they arrive, they tell him that they're going to slay monsters to be promoted to B rank. Kelvin introduces Luca and Ellie as his mates, and Mel and Rian also introduce themselves, making Erd's party jealous. When Sarah's group returns, they reveal they eliminated all monsters in the forest, so Kelvin later apologizes to Erd, who doesn't think too much about it, but recommends reporting it to Leo. Kelvin and Ryan bathe the shadow wolf, now named Alex by Ryan, in the mansion courtyard as Kelvin thinks about the S-rank exam. Rian reveals her animal comprehension skill when Alex tells her he's hungry. Gerard summons Ryan for sword practice, and she spends the rest of the day with Kelvin's friends. That night, Sierra informs Kelvin of 14 assassins surrounding the mansion, so Kelvin uses the Farsight skill to locate the leader, and decides this is a perfect test for Ryan. He gives her a mini Clotho, uploads his Farsight and Analyze skills to the slave network, and gives her the resonating mithril sword. The intruders associated with Kristoff and Tricen are dealt with by Ryan and Alex, while Kelvin and Sierra quietly watch them. Once they are defeated, Clotho cleans up the area, and Kelvin deals with the stragglers outside the mansion. Meanwhile, at Trycen Castle, Emperor Zel Trycen holds a meeting with his generals and children about their cooperation with Kristoff's slave trading ring. Doramus, Toraj, and Gon decide to form an alliance against Trycen, and despite claiming Kristoff isn't connected, Emperor Zel worries, so Tristan says they should go to war. Believing their military is superior, Shatora opposes this, while her brother Asgard supports it, but General Dan sides with Shatora, leaving the final vote to General Clive. General Dan's son Jin delivers a message to Clive in his room, stating that he has to attend the Round Table Conference, after which Clive gets up and asks Jin if he's pretty. Kelvin's group rides a wagon through the Crest Forest southwest of Gon, hurrying to an elven village. Ifo feels a sense of familiarity, so Kelvin says it's because of her elven blood. Sarah finds it odd that elves live on the eastern continent, and Mel explains that they migrated from the western continent over a decade ago and are under Gon's protection. In a flashback, Guildmaster Leo tells Kelvin about small clashes between Trycen and Gon. Trycen avoids trouble with Parth or Toraj, but probably engages in slavery. Leo predicts a future invasion and war, and gives Kelvin a special quest from Leonhart Gon, the Beast King, who wants to meet him personally. Gerard comments on how fortunate Kelvin is to have King Leonhart involved in his S-rank promotion, so Kelvin says he needs Queen Tsubaki's approval too. They discuss defending the elven village from an S-rank monster, which Kelvin suspects is linked to Trycen. Elven archers stop them, but Kelvin explains the situation, and the village elder Nelrus greets them before, recognizing Ethel as Rumil, and asking how she's still alive. In the village, Nelrus apologizes for his earlier behavior, and Kelvin asks about Rumil, so he recounts the elven village's past on the western continent, where a fire dragon demanded an elf step forward, or it would destroy the village. Rumil offered herself as the dragon's bride, leaving a pendant with Nelrus, and her dead body was found years later. Fearing the dragon would return, the elves fled to the eastern continent, and people would think Rumil was Ethel's mother. Nelrus explains monsters penetrate the village's barrier and kidnap elves, so Kelvin and the party agree to help, and he allows Kelvin to make renovations. That night, monsters and soldiers from Trycen attack the village, so Ethel snipes the soldiers with her shadow bow, and the village's defenses are fortified. Mel creates mist, Sarah enchants a moat with black magic, and Gerard guards the entryway. A messenger reports that B-rank monsters were defeated by adventurers, so the vice commander uses a secret weapon, a gigant lord. Mel has Rion and Alex fight it, but Rion's sword breaks, so they manage to defeat the giant lord with help from Clotho and Alex. Suddenly, the giant lord transforms into the furnace lord, so Rion defeats it with her Generate Edge attack. Back at the village, General Clive and his soldiers attack Kelvin and Ethel. General Clive, accompanied by 4 soldiers, praises Ethel but orders her to become his slave. He tries to charm her, so Kelvin rushes in to attack and says Ethel is under his protection. He then uses appraisal to reveal Clive's stats. Learning that Clive is also reincarnated, Clive deduces they're both similar, before Kelvin instructs Ethel to retreat in stealth mode, and then transforms the mountain into 4 obsidian javelins to attack Clive. However, Clive's helix barrier deflects the attack, and his charmed soldiers attack Kelvin. He says he believes his soldiers are loyal not just due to his charm ability but because they admire him. But Ethel breaks his helix barrier with an arrow, and Kelvin's 4 golems join the fight. Impressed, he orders his soldiers to handle the golems while he fights Kelvin. During the battle, Kelvin notices Clive's attacks also harm his own soldiers, but Clive doesn't care about, bragging about his cheat ability's freedom. Disgusted by Clive's attitude, Kelvin manages to scar his face after breaking his helix barrier, so Clive retaliates by breaking his staff, which Kelvin has Clotho consume. Enraged, Clive casts the rank S spell, Tempest Barrier, covering the area in a windy storm, so Kelvin uses his black staff Disaster, an S-rank weapon, to destroy his Tempest Barrier, slicing off the top of a nearby mountain and Clive's legs. Before he can finish Clive off, General Phase teleports him away and introduces himself as the Mastermind behind the attack on the Elven village, and Kelvin considers it a draw before returning to the village to recover. At Trisand Castle, Clive is chained and tortured by his charmed soldiers under Phase's orders as part of an experiment for cursed weapons. Back in the Elven village, Kelvin's party and the villagers celebrate with a banquet, as Kelvin, watching from a hill, is joined by Ethel, who shows him a medallion from her mother. Kelvin attaches it to her hair, and she vows to serve him her whole life, which Kelvin accepts. The rest of Kelvin's party and Leonhardt Gone, disguised as a little elf girl, join them. Gone announces Kelvin's successful S-rank exam and an upcoming promotion ceremony with mock battles against the other S ranks in 4 days, so Kelvin says he can't help but feel excited right now.